Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon, and I've been investing in property for over 20 years. And if you're an active landlord or planning your next property investment, this podcast is for you. Normally, I tend to talk about topics that are more for active investors, as in investors that have already got started and are already doing things, whether that's looking for their next property investment, or perhaps that's around managing and optimizing and looking after their current property investments. But in the last month or so, I've met a couple of different people and also had emails from a few more people who are much more at the beginning end of their property journey. And they've been asking for sort of suggestions and ideas around really that very first step in property investment and how best, or how I would recommend that people sort of get started on their property investment journey. These people were all looking to start buying. So they did have money. They weren't just looking to get started in property somehow and perhaps didn't have funds available yet and things like that. So I appreciate this is not going to cover everyone who's starting to sort of work out their future in property and how they can best leverage property. These people were in a very fortunate position that they had saved up money and they did have money that they were ready to deploy. But they didn't really know how to do that or what to look at to help them get going in that process. They had never owned investment property before. I'm not sure actually whether they owned their own residential properties. I suspect most of them did, or do. But they hadn't owned investment property. That was sort of the level that these people were all at. Quite how I've managed to come across several of them in just the last month or so, whereas I don't very often, I'm not sure. But given that they had all cropped up recently, they were sort of top of mind for me. And I thought I would record a little episode this week around that sort of getting started, but where you are in a good position and you are ready to start buying, but you're just not quite sure where to go or what to do at this point. So first up, my sort of initial getting started, not quite sure where to go kind of suggestion is really to attend some property events. And this is not necessarily for the events themselves, although you can get some really good information, some really good knowledge from presentations and things at such property events. But it is more about being able to talk to people. Maybe people like me, but also lots of other and varied people to get a wider idea of what you could potentially be doing next and how to approach things. Because while I'm going to give you some suggestions today in this episode, you may decide that they're not the right suggestions for you and that's not the right approach for getting started in your property investments. And talking to other people, talking to a wider range of people will help you work out what that appropriate sort of journey forwards is for you. So if you happen to be in the same neck of the woods as me, in the sort of southeast around the Gatwick area, there's an excellent property meet in Crawley and another excellent property meet in Guildford. So the one in Crawley is called Crawley Property Meet. The one in Guildford is called Surrey Property Exchange. But there will be excellent property events wherever you are. And one that I'm aware of that I've heard good things about, I've never actually been to one of these events, but I have heard good things about them. And they are national. And that's Property and Poppadoms. So they're a very relaxed style of event. They tend not to have presentations or that sort of thing. They are much more about just talking to other property investors and gaining knowledge that way. So links to all three of those will be in the show notes and maybe any others that I happen to think of before I have published the show notes. So do look in the show notes for links to real life physical property events you can attend and network at. I should also mention here that there are online property meetups, and these can be great for sharing knowledge. I haven't really found any that are good for the networking and the sort of general discussion and learning from peers side of things. If you are aware of any such events that do run online and are good for that sort of meeting peers and just sharing knowledge, please do let me know. I'd love to know about them. You can email me on show@thebusinessofproperty.com. I really would like to learn about those. Sticking with sort of the online side of things, that's really what my next sort of suggestion is. And it's all around online research and online learning. If you want to get into property investment, you've probably already done some of this in order to sort of come to that as a conclusion. But before you actually do make a purchase and you do start that property investment journey, there is a lot that you should learn. There is a lot that you should look into. An awful lot of information is available for free, and you can find it in text or podcast or video form, however it is you prefer to consume things. Of course, do be aware that most free online resources are effectively trying to sell you something. Personally, I sell software to make life easier for property investors and existing landlords. Others might be selling property sourcing services, or maybe training courses or mentorship or something along those lines. Obviously, some of these services are excellent. Some of these services are very well priced. Unfortunately, some of them perhaps are not quite so great, not quite so well priced or such good value though. So you do need to look out and be aware of where this information is coming from. Obviously, if you're just taking away the core information, it can still be fantastic. And indeed, if you want to follow up with some of the services from these people as well, that may also be fantastic, but just be aware of that element. So despite those warnings, there is an incredible amount of excellent information available in all of those different formats. And I really do recommend that you spend time, hours, adding up to days, probably, perhaps even more, looking into this information and learning and familiarizing yourself with how property investment works and how it makes a profit, which leads on to the next step that I'm going to suggest, and that is to start analyzing property. And I suggest you start doing this online. So obviously, in a moment, we're going to talk about actually looking at properties and buying properties. But before you get to that step, I feel you should try to have a wider view of potential properties. So browse the property portals, look for property in your investment area, or if you haven't decided on an investment area yet, look at a range of potential areas and dig into the properties that are there. Use the free PATMA browser extension for some extra information, and then work out purchase costs, mortgages, possible profit. Actually put together investment scenarios. Work out how how a dozen properties could work for you. I don't mean a dozen as a huge portfolio. I mean, look at them individually. Consider each one as potential first property purchase and work out how that could work for you. Work out whether some couldn't work. Find those that don't work so you're aware of what doesn't work and aware of what does or could work. There's a completely free, simple calculator and also a spreadsheet analysis tool available from PATMA. I'll make sure there are links to those in the show notes. Or there are also paid tools out there. I'm, of course, going to mention PATMA's Deal Finder Pro and Deal Finder Starter, which includes the deal analysis tool. But if you don't like that, there are lots of other tools out there as well. And of course, if you really want to dig in and really want to understand how the finances are working, I highly recommend building your own spreadsheet. Not because I think spreadsheets are the best way of tracking this information, But the process of building that spreadsheet will really help you to understand the financials and understand the process that you are building in a property investment and how that can actually turn a profit and make money over time. Whatever method you do use, though, I really do feel this is an important step in order to get a feel for what's available, what properties are out there, how they work financially, what rents are like in the areas you're looking at as well, and possibly also the potential sort of market that you're likely to be serving in different areas. So is it an area that really requires student lets because it's very student heavy? Or is it an area where you're looking for younger people who might be looking for smaller homes? Or is it much more of a family area where the schools are very good and you're looking for family homes? So there's lots of things to consider and to learn about how to consider. Now, next up, I'm going to suggest you have a bit of a choice. And that's a really fundamental choice. And of course, there are lots of choices you're making along the way here. But the fundamental one here is whether you want to buy with help or whether you want to do it yourself. And here I mean buying with help would be using a property sourcer to help you find that best or good deal where you can actually buy a property. So they would be doing the work of scouring the property portals, perhaps going out and viewing the property, checking it's good, maybe negotiating with the seller even, in order to sort of present a ready-made property that's suitable as an investment property. And if you're taking that approach, you really do need to put effort into choosing the people you work with, making sure you're happy with that person or that company and that you're pleased with their approach to finding properties and presenting investment properties. The other approach would be taking more of a do-it-yourself or DIY approach, where you will be going out and scouring the property portals yourself, or going out and talking to local agents, perhaps local to you, but local to the area you're investing in, and actually going out and viewing properties and looking around, considering what's good or bad, making sure you do your own calculations from scratch to work out which properties are good for investment and which are not, both from a financial point of view, but also from a location and physical sort of presence point of view as well. Either way, though, you'll do better with the research and learning I've already mentioned. As in, if you already know a lot about your area, if you've already looked at the type of properties around, if you already know how to put together the financials and analyze the potential profit in an investment. Even if you're not actually putting together that, if you're using a property sourcer to help you present it, you will still do better if you can then pick that apart and understand it and make sure that their numbers are correct, basically, and that you have faith and trust in the deal that is being presented. And then, obviously, this is quite a high level sort of view and approach here, but I'm then going to say that the final step in getting started, but of course, the first step in actually being a property investor is then to make a choice and to buy a property. This last step might take a while, especially on the sort of DIY route, and I think that's fine. I would like to suggest you don't jump at the first property a sourcer sends you, or the first property you spot on a portal that looks good and that you actually go and visit, or that the agent says is a fantastic investment and will be snapped up in no time. Make sure you don't delay. I would like to suggest that maybe you actually do have a bit of time. Make sure you check the details. And if it could be a high demand property, yes, check them quickly. Do the numbers quickly. Make sure you check the investment works. Talk to a mortgage broker about that particular property and about the mortgage and the numbers around the mortgage on that particular deal. If you need to take a bit of time, that's okay. Property, generally speaking, works best as a long-term investment. You can afford to take a little bit of time to find a good deal. Having said that, don't wait for the perfect deal. Perfect deals are very, very rare, especially when you're just getting started and you don't really yet know what you don't know. So you can't really be sure that it is a perfect deal, even because you haven't most likely got sort of the full picture to be able to really analyze it. So settle for a good, solid deal and then buy it. Put in an offer. Perhaps it gets rejected. Perhaps you decide to increase the offer, or perhaps you decide to move on and look for a different deal, another deal that is going to work at the numbers that you are prepared to pay. Don't get sucked into increasing and effectively breaking your deal by spending too much on the property. You can wait, especially in the current property market where it is a bit more of a buyer's market. You can take time. You can look for a good, solid deal before you actually move forward. Just don't leave it too long. Don't wait for perfect. You will learn an awful lot more once you actually start doing. So I think it's important to go to the events. I think it's important to speak to people, to consider options, to make sure you understand the finances, to make sure you know where you're investing in order to analyze the properties and consider the individual property that you might be buying. But your real education will start when you actually buy a property. And once you've got that offer accepted, and once that process starts, keep going to the property events. Keep reading, listening, and watching information and knowledge that you can gain online and from your peers at the property events. You will keep learning a lot and you will keep gaining information. And then as you're going through your property journey, you'll be able to start sharing that with other people at these events as well. And of course, please feel free to let me know how it goes. You can reach me on show@thebusinessofproperty.com. You will also find lots of links to things that I've mentioned in this episode in the show notes of this episode, whether that's in your podcast player, on YouTube, or on thebusinessofproperty.com. Thank you very much for listening. I look forward to speaking to you again next time.